Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily for November 19th, 2024. Coming up, Joel Embiid played for the Sixers and it did not go well for the Sixers. We got Kelly Iko to talk about the Rockets right after their loss to the Bucks. And we're going to take a look at the Pacers and figure out what is wrong with Tyrese Haliburton. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Es. Welcome back to the show. People are freaking out over the Philadelphia 76ers this morning. Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Joel Embiid was a late decision, literally 21 minutes before the scheduled tip. I texted Es and I said, hey, looks like Embiid's going to play. They tried to sneak attack, I guess, the Miami Heat, and it did not work. It just didn't work in any way whatsoever.
Very Nick Nurse type of thing to do, by the way.
They're going to do this to us all year, Es. It's going to get annoying already. They've been fined once for the delayed announcement of the lineups. I don't know if this will happen again because apparently he was dealing with an illness, and it looked like it when he was on the court. The Sixers... Yeah. They lost a game by 17 that they led by as much as 19. And Embiid is the biggest story for the Sixers all season. Yep. He's the biggest story from this game. He looked bad in the game. I think he lacks confidence when he's out there, which is an odd thing to say about a guy who, is an MVP.
Yeah.
Defensively, we expected him to struggle a little bit and not to look like he had any condition. But there was not much effort there. He was like spinning around in circles sometimes, looking like he didn't really even know what to do. It was confusing to me. I guess they're trying to let him play himself into shape. That's an awful way to win basketball games. And now they're 2-11. Like, it's getting late, although luckily they're in the East.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 2-11 makes them, like 4 games back of a playing spot in the East, which is just wild to consider. You're right about Embiid. I thought they found a way early to try and get him going, right? Like empty side stuff, get him in the post, try to get him some easy looks, right? Because that's what you need when you're dealing with an illness and coming back from injury. Like, let's just try to spoon feed him some good opportunities. It worked initially, and that's how the Sixers climbed and got that lead, that 17-point lead. But then in the second half, and especially in the second quarter, they just collapsed. I mean, I think part of it is the fact that their offense, which is now 30th in the league, right? Dead last in the league offensively, is predicated on, okay, Joel Embiid is going to have so much attention around him. They're going to have to send help to guard Joel, especially in the post, mid-high post, especially that nail area. And then the shooters will be able to knock down these shots. But Eric Gordon, 1 of 4 tonight. Kelly Oubre, 1 of 4 tonight, who has been really, really bad this whole year. Kyle Lowry, who continues to play heavy minutes for them, just really hasn't had anything to provide on that end. And that's Raptors legend Kyle Lowry. And I'm truthfully saying, like, he has not looked the greatest this year at all. So the shooters that they expected to knock down their shots, Caleb Martin, another guy, 2 of 6 tonight. Paul George, right? Paul George, movement shooter, one of the best.
That's what you're supposed to do.
That's what he signed up for. And he was 1 of 7 from 3 tonight. So, like, the offense is really, really bad. And part of it is just the fact that the Sixers complimentary guys that they signed, that they spent big money to go out and get, have not been doing their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, they built this team and we haven't really seen it at full strength. And we're going to all say the same stuff, but it doesn't change the fact that they're 2-11. And that they blew a 19-point lead in a game that Paul George and Joel Embiid both played in.
Yeah.
Inexcusable.
Yeah.
After the game, the Sixers, I mean, again, 13 games into this new team, and they're having a team meeting. Nick Nurse described it as a little meeting. It took them over an hour for Nick Nurse to even just make it to the podium in the post game. And you know how the media, our friends in the media, They were not happy about that.
Of course.
Rightfully. It's an East Coast. It's late over there.
Yeah.
And apparently this meeting was player and coach driven. So, not just a players only meeting, which I don't know why. Like, why do you need the coaches in there?
Yeah.
What are they even going to do? Let's be honest here.
If it's a player and coach meeting, wouldn't that just be a regular meeting, like a film session?
I mean, maybe you guys should have these, schedule them, do them a little bit more often, try to get on the same page.
Yeah.
Look, the bright side here is this is another game where Jared McCain looks good.
Totally.
And But, all this is going to do, in my opinion, we're going to start asking all these questions. Okay, so this team, does it look to you like this is a conference finalist?
I mean, no, not really at all. I mean, there hasn't been many teams in the Eastern Conference that has convinced me they could be a conference finalist right now, for what it's worth. The East has struggled.
There's two.
It's just Boston and Cleveland. But that being said, looking at what this team could even potentially be, I don't know, man. 2-11, and you look at they really need Tyrese Maxey back. They really need the creation juice of Tyrese Maxey. And yes, Jared McCain is doing his thing. By the way, I think we talked about it before about Maxey and McCain, and should they start those guys together? Just commit to it. At this point, what do you have to play?
Your 5 best guys. That's exactly. Honestly, with the way things have gone for them so far, and I think, look, you can point to Cleveland and you can say you can make this work, especially if Joel Embiid winds up getting himself into shape and can be an elite defender. Yeah. We know Paul George can do that. They can throw another guy out there. There's no reason why you shouldn't play your 5 best guys. And I think Jared McCain right now for sure is one of them. I think you can make an argument from Nick Nurse when they get Maxey back, whenever that's going to be. We still don't even know what the timetable really is going to be for him coming back from a hamstring. So when they get him back, I actually think Jared McCain could help them quite a bit, because the bench units, which we saw in the game last night, the bench did really, really well with Jared McCain. Yeah. And that was where they sort of built that lead. I don't know how much of that was, hey, they had a really good bench run, or it was Joel was off the court, Andre Drummond was out there in better shape and just looked better, which he did.
Drummond has been good
to the eye test.
Yeah.
And so they just played better out there. It's hard to tell. But again, man, 2-11. That
1, 2,
if I
3,
told you
4,
this 2
5,
months
11
ago,
losses.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, again, I think there's gonna be a lot of meat on the Sixers bone. We're gonna be eating off this for a while.
On the Heat side, I will say Jimmy Butler came back, dropped 30 points, looked good. Now Tyler Hero can step into a better role. Tyler Hero, by the way, has been incredible all year for them. So maybe they start.
Great third quarter. Yeah.
Maybe the wheels start working for maybe.
Let's no miracles here. Guys, sometimes, look, we make mistakes here on the show. So I'm issuing our first correction on the podcast. This is actually it's kind of a big deal. We described I should say, let me take the blame.
We all did. We can lean in. It's all good.
Okay. Yeah. I described the Julius Randle game-winning push-off maneuver as an offensive foul. Well, the NBA went back, the last 2-minute report, which we love, they went back and looked. He didn't actually push off. He traveled. So nice. I apologize to everyone. I'll never do that again. As luckily for me, in my embarrassment, that we got another controversial end of game call in Sacramento. The Kings lose to the Hawks. This is a huge win for the Hawks.
Yeah.
De'Aaron Fox has just been on fire, and he gets shut down with what we can only describe as a buzzer-beating steal by who else?
Dyson Daniels.
Daniels. Okay, so the controversy here. Did he foul him?
So, man, I don't think he fouled him. And I think there is the benefit of the doubt of how good Dyson Daniels has been defensively, that refs aren't going to call that a foul. You think of the deflections, you think of the steals, what he's been doing on that end. I don't think the refs would call that. That being said, there is a version of this where he stepped out of bounds after he stole the ball. There's a couple of different angles of it. Maybe he did step out of bounds. Maybe it would have given the Kings another opportunity. That's more interesting to me than the foul, in my opinion. But I mean, look, I feel bad for Kings fans because that's a tough one.
Everybody, just tune in tomorrow. We'll update you guys.
We'll just become the Athletic last 2-minute report. Yeah, that's
100%.
Yeah.
Stick around, guys. We got Kelly Eco hanging out after the break. Just about every NBA podcaster last night was watching Rockets Bucks because they had the panic meters ready. They had the panic streamers ready. We were all ready to bury the Milwaukee Bucks. And then Damian Lillard bails them out with a game-winning layup that I don't even know how he got to against that Houston Rockets defense to give them a 101-100 win over the Rockets, killing the Rockets 5-game win streak. We're jinxing teams now.
It sucks, man.
We're potting enough that we're jinxing teams when they're on these win streaks. And we also got our guest Kelly Iko, our regional reporter, our regional beat writer covering the Rockets and a bunch of other teams. Kelly, you're there in Milwaukee. You were at the game. This was a game that, number one, I felt like the Rockets were going to win going in. They're on this win streak. They look really good. This is sort of defense that has bothered the Bucks in the half court. And this is the sort of team that gets out in transition and tends to really push the pace, which the Bucks struggle with. And they had a nice lead. They blew that lead, but I always knew they were coming back. They just felt in control of this game. And then they gave it up at the end, Kelly. And if I was watching the end of that game very closely, and I saw Ime Udoka essentially sprint walks down the tunnel, and he just looks pissed. So I want to start there. What had Ime so mad about the end of that game? Because look, man, Damian Lillard, he hits game-winning shots all the time. What about this one had him so mad?
I think the biggest thing why Ime was mad was because the lack of communication defensively. There were too many breakdowns. They allowed Brook Lopez to catch fire, a guy that came into the year shooting 30% from three. And a team like Milwaukee that is pretty even across the board in terms of their shots at the rim, shots from three. It's kind of tricky when you want to scheme and trying to figure out what you want to take away. Do you want to form a wall on Giannis? Do you want to allow him to cook and then keep everyone else at home? This was a game where you kind of see a number of breakdowns in communication. They either switch too late or they didn't switch at all, and they try to let guys go one-on-one, and that led to further breakdowns, and you just see a compounding of mistakes, and that's why you saw Ime just storm off the game. It felt like a playoff game. Like it felt like they lost game one at home, and it's like they lost that home court advantage. But it's mid-November, and that's kind of telling you the level of urgency the Rockets have in terms of trying to set the tone from a defensive standpoint, and also trying to put their name in that Western Conference hierarchy.
They've been so lenient in terms of the matchups that they run and like the closing lineups that they go with. Jabari Smith Jr. tonight didn't close, right? And it was Amen Thompson in place for him. Only played 24 minutes tonight. Some nights it's Tari Eason stepping in and closing with them. What do you think it is about this team that one allows them to do that? And maybe is that nipping him in the butt a little bit? Like, is that hurting them on that side to not have that guaranteed closing lineup to go?
It's a gift and a curse. Ime is a guy that's going to roll with the hot hand. And if he sees pretty early on that someone doesn't have it, he's going to, look for the bench for options. We saw tonight. Yeah. He tried to play Reed. Reed wasn't going. Jabari wasn't going. So he brings in Aaron Holiday. He brings in, Jeff Green for a little bit. And then he ends up going the distance with Amen Thompson and Tari Eason. But one of the keys for Houston defensively this season has been the reliance on Alperen Sengun. His emergence as a rim protector, his emergence as a guy that can be on the floor for long stretches. We know as a rookie, and even up until last season, there were times where he was played off the floor because he didn't have the conditioning or he didn't have the skill set to defend in space or defend guys. Now we're seeing him being placed on guards, being placed on wings, being placed on bigs, and he can kind of do it all. So in a game like this where you're looking for that fifth guy to close. And we saw, I think they went 1 for 9 in the last 4 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
It was like a sluggish, exactly the kind of game that the Bucks wanted. I know that's the kind of game that Doc Rivers wanted for sure.
Totally.
Slug it out and put the ball in Dame and Giannis' hands to win the game. But from a Houston standpoint, they want to get the best shots they can, especially for a team that doesn't shoot well from three at all. And we saw, it might have been tired legs. This was their sixth game in 9 days. So that could be that. It was just one of those things where
listen, I'm not going to give them that excuse, Kelly. I think they're a little too young for us to say that they got tired legs. But when I'm watching this game down the stretch, you just kind of pointed this out. I'm thinking to myself, who's the guy that's going to go get him a bucket? You need that guy if you're going to be a home court advantage team in the playoffs. If you're going to win a first round playoff series, maybe make a conference finals run. I mean, this defense I think is going to be playoff ready, but you need a guy, and I think Jalen Green, he at least fits that mold. If you squint, right, and you're looking at him, he's the guy.
He had a good fourth quarter too,
had
right?
A great fourth quarter. I mean, why didn't they maybe run more stuff for him? Get him and Sengun operating a little bit more together in a two-man game. I mean, down the stretch, is it a trust issue or is it just a function of playing out there with veterans?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's something where And if we're being honest, this is in Illinois. Fred VanVleet had an event for kids bringing out. We saw what he did last night in Chicago. He wants to take it to them, because he's from Rockford. Rockford is halfway between Chicago and Milwaukee.
Yep.
He had, I think he finished 26 tonight. It's a number of things. And then you're playing in Milwaukee where it's like at any given point, Giannis can go super turbo nuclear. So it's like you're trying to figure out on the fly in real time in a tough environment. It's a very hard place to play in Milwaukee, if it's their form. And the game is just drawing out. And you could tell very early on that if you weren't going to play through Alperen, and they did it for a little bit and then they went away from it. And the problem with Houston offensively is that they have so many options. It's like a jack of all trades and a master of none. Like you can play through so many different options, but at some point you're going to have to find some consistency, especially in the fourth quarter late in the game when it's winning time. You're going to have to find a system to go through.
Well, what's their identity? What's their identity, Kelly?
Yeah.
Right? Like what do they have to go to when it gets tight? And I'm not holding them to too high of a standard. They are a young team and they're going to figure this out. But I'm just curious, like right now, like what would you say? Like what's the butter to their bread and butter, I
think the bread and butter should be the two-man game between Alperen and Jalen, but everything should start with Alperen in terms of getting him on the low block, getting him in the mid post, and allowing him to dictate depending on what the defense is giving to him. Now, on games like this where he kind of starts out slow, you have to go through your plan B and C. Plan B is, let's see what Fred has tonight. Can he get it going? Because he's a guy that wants to defer off the rip. So can he turn up a notch and get it going? And plan C is seeing if Jalen, can find a rhythm, because he's a rhythm guy. We saw in the fourth quarter where he hits I think like 5 in a row and then kind of teeters off. It's just a give and take. Like they have too many options. And I think that lack of a true identity is what's going to be the most detrimental thing come down the road, because they have a defensive identity. They're going to swarm. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be in your physical. Offensive is another issue. And I think it's going to take some time and more reps under Ime and more, trial and error for games like this to kind of figure out, okay, what do we want to do on any given night?
Yeah, if we're judging them by tonight, I'm just going to say this team does not look ready to make a push for the NBA Cup. That's what I'm going to say. So they are not ready right now. Kelly Iko, go and read him over at The Athletic. He's going to write about this all season long. This team is a team to watch, and Kelly, got to read. Coming up after the break, we're going to take a look at the Pacers and specifically what's going on with Tyrese Haliburton. The Toronto Raptors, your Toronto Raptors, ended their losing streak. They were lucky. The Pacers decided they were going to have an off night in Toronto. And so the Raptors just really boat raced them in this game. But, my big takeaway from watching this game and the last couple of weeks, what is going on with Tyrese Haliburton? I mean, there's nothing on his three ball at all. It almost looks like he's just flicking it up. Like there's nothing behind it. Yeah, he's not able to get into the paint. He doesn't look right.
Yeah. Well, when you're watching the game tonight, it just felt like he was a step slow for certain things. And you think of the pace that Haliburton plays with. You think of how frenetic it is, the last year's Pacers and the way they're just kind of running and gunning. It doesn't feel like it's to the same degree. The shooting is interesting as well. He's 2 of 9 tonight from behind the arc. He's now shooting 29% on the season on threes. And so to your point about not having his legs under him, I do think that's factoring into the 3-point shot, because that's what made him so deadly, right? Especially at the start of last season. It was weaponizing the pull up to get 2 to the ball. Then an advantage is created and boom, that's the Pacers offense pretty much. While, especially during that in-season tournament run, it just hasn't looked the same. And, truthfully, like Pascal Siakam has been their best player this season,
well, hold on. Now, Pascal Siakam was their best player last season. And I think that as soon as he got there, he was the best player on the team. But the engine that drives that offense is Tyrese Haliburton. Yeah. It is the pull-up threes. It is, it's making threes too. But also it's paint touches. It's getting 2 feet in the box and finding a guy to kick out to. Even his assist numbers are down. He's down to 8.5 assists a game. That's a big deal, and I don't know how much of that is noise in that maybe his teammates are missing more shots than usual. I'm not looking at the advanced tracking numbers there. But that matches the eye test to me. And most of that is, I feel like it's pass instead of a direct pass from Haliburton, because he's just not able to break down the defenses in the same way. But this is not the Pacers team that we expected, this offseason. Yeah. We thought this Pacers team maybe had an improved defense, might be pushing like a conference finals. Maybe they could break through and get to the finals. But they don't look like a contender at all.
For what it's worth, it's not just this game. Yes, Jakob Poeltl and RJ Barrett were great. Shout out to those guys.
Yeah, but it was a trend.
It wasn't just this game. It's been a trend for the Pacers. I think it was a game we were watching together against the Orlando Magic where they just looked a step slow. Yeah. They weren't able to establish anything offensively. And maybe it's because there's two contrasting styles. Caitlin Cooper obviously is excellent when it comes to writing about the Pacers. She was writing about how one half of the roster is fit to play this transition style, and the other half is more built to work in the half court. And it's kind of clashing right now.
Yeah, those Pascal Siakam post-ups are at opposition completely with
what
Tyrese Haliburton with the pull-up jumpers in transition. But I mean, the East stinks, although they did pick up 3 big wins tonight, taking them up from 15 to 18 on the season. So,
Magic
big
winning
deal for
a
the
game,
East. That's
Hawks winning a game.
That's
the East
right. So good for the East.
Is on the come up, man.
Nah, I wouldn't go that far. That's going to do it for today's show, folks. Thank you guys for tuning in. For Es Baraheni, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thank you guys for waking up with us.